Hey friends, today I wanted to do a video where I show kind of a step-by-step process of portrait drawing. And the subject for this portrait is James Baldwin, who I actually have not drawn before. Um, I've done a lot of uh, recognizable figures throughout the years. And part of the reason that I practice drawing faces that are recognizable is to make sure that my portraiture is in check, and it's just kind of good practice for drawing recognizable faces in general. Um, because first of all, with faces, there's the challenge of just making uh, the portrait actually look accurate in terms of anatomy and lighting and skin tone and things like that. But then the other part of portraiture is the likeness and making it look like the person, which doesn't always mean that you just draw the figure exactly as it is. A lot of times it's learning how to accentuate features, how to make the likeness a little more flattering. Um, so there's a lot that comes into play. So I do practice these shoulder up portraits quite a bit, and occasionally I'll get commissioned for something like this. But even if I don't, um, or if I do end up doing something that's more full figure, this kind of practice really helps to come into play. So what I've done so far is I've sketched out the proportions in kind of a lighter color pencil. I like using earth green, which is a Faber Castell Polychromos color pencil. And now I'm using kind of a darker blue to define some of the lines a bit more. And when I do that first initial drawing, what I'm really thinking about is the way that the skull informs the information on the face. So it's less about the eyes and the mouth and the nose, and more about figuring out the eye sockets, or the way that the cheekbones describe the shadows on the cheeks, and things like that. So that's kind of my main focus on the underdrawing. And then when I start to define these edges, then I'm going in with a darker color. And, I'm sort of like adding value in as I go. I'm really trying to think about how the light source uh, defines some of those shapes. But as I go around, I'm also keeping in mind that this is a drawing that I'm going to paint. So even though I'm defining edges, what I'm really trying to define are the areas that I still want to be able to see through the paint as I go. So defining some of the collar here, going back in with some of the earth green to get the shading to be a little more subtle in spots. And again, not all of this information will bleed through to the painting, but I like to add it in. I like to think it's also kind of a muscle memory thing. So now that the drawing's done, I grab a can of Workable Fixative, and I'll go to a well ventilated area, which in my case is the garage at my studio. Then I mix up some color, and what I'm doing right now is thinking of kind of a base color that I can put underneath the entire painting, something that sort of unifies things. So I know that ultimately I want the lighting on this to have kind of a greenish, bluish feel that is countered with more maroon colors in the background. So that's kind of the first color that I mix up, and I cover the whole drawing with this color. I like adding that little swatch over the top too. It just kind of gives the feeling of livelihood, I suppose. So as you can see, when I paint over the drawing, you can still see the lines, and that's obviously crucial, because if I got rid of all the lines, then what's the point of that first drawing? So to me, the ability to see the drawing through, it's less about this becoming a coloring book, um, or that type of thinking, and it's more about just the interaction between color pencil and paint. So there'll be parts in the final drawing, or in the final painting, excuse me, where you can see the pencil come through, and there'll be other parts where the paint is quite thick, like this side of the jacket right there, and you won't be able to see the pencil come through. Um, But in all instances, I'm just not trying to necessarily hide the fact that there is a pencil uh, underdrawing on this. So, so I like working on the clothes first, because I know that there's probably going to be parts of the figure that need to overlap the clothes, either parts of the skin, or if the subject had longer hair, that would overlap the clothes, or even just a shadow. So for this case, it's just going to be a shadow that goes on. But um, now I've redefined some of the darker edges, and I'm going in with some areas that are definitely in shadow. And at this point, I'm trying to think of colors that I can use in more than one place. So um, I I like to think very broadly in the earlier stages of a painting and the earlier stages of a drawing for that matter, um, and then work more specific. So this color here that's on the side of the nose, that's the same color that I used on the right side of the neck and underneath the chin. And again, I'm using broader colors in here that I can sort of use all over the place. Um, and the fun thing about doing these portraits is that you can kind of play with color once you really understand how color and value are connected. So, on its own, this is a pretty sage, almost grayish color. And here's sort of a like muted pink color up in the forehead. Um, and again, maybe more of like a steel gray right here. And on their own, those colors you would never look at and assume that those could appear in flesh tones. But it's all dependent on the lighting and about how you see the color. So I always try to see color as if it's value, meaning that I look and I try to think, okay, is this more of a mid tone, more of a dark tone, more of a lighter tone? And the more you practice that, the more you can kind of be free with color decisions. Now, there's a funny moment in pretty much every painting I do where things feel kind of awkward, don't look so good, and I'm kind of having a little bit of doubt whether it's even going to work out. Um, and I'm a little bit past that moment at this point, but part of it is just the genesis of a painting. You know, it's never going to look good the entire way through. There's going to be moments where the values don't totally link up, or when you put a brighter color down and it just looks shockingly bright compared to everything else. Um, and so there's a little bit of trust the process that you have to deal with. Like for instance, at this point, when I'm putting in this highlight color here, which is, you know, a kind of a brighter green, um, it actually ends up connecting things a little bit. Um, so that's something that you sort of learn to roll with as you work. Is just the idea that there's going to be kind of a weird stage. There's going to be a stage where you might lose a little bit of confidence, and you have to learn what that stage is and kind of get through it. So as I'm defining edges here, sometimes those highlights and the redefining of darker values ends up tying the whole piece together. And it's not always just the highlight in the eye. Sometimes it's highlights on the cheeks or on the nose, just things that really, again, like redefine edges and help bring the whole thing together. All right, now I add my signature in the end. And as we look around, we can see that there's a sense of realism that I always go for, but there's also a good amount of experimentation with color, which is what I always try to do. Thanks for watching.